She had believed the land was her enemy. She struggled against it, but you cannot make war against the land any more than you could against the sea. One had to learn to live with it, to belong to it, to fit into its seasons and its ways. Louis L'Amour. Why are things in nature in perfect balance and man-made systems unstable? Man has always been in constant struggle against nature ever since we emerged. Our very existence and lifestyle is mankind's testament to that struggle. By man observing nature, we see the problem and tinker with many solutions to solve the problem. Man will keep with a system that profits him over nature. But if that system is not harmonious with nature, it will ultimately collapse. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again with the expectations of different results. Albert Einstein. Throughout most of human history, the question has been, how can we? Now we need to ask, why should we? We spend trillions of dollars on stuff that doesn't make society any better. Wars, bailouts, government research, etc. This wasteful spending leads to debt enslavement, wasted precious resources, wasted time, and wasted lives in order to stave off the reality of the system that is completely unnatural and only for the benefit of the elite. This exponential growth economy, this isn't my chart, but I thought this was a great representation of taking things to extreme. You have this capitalism, socialism model, profit, industrialism, and ownership. It's a little socialist leaning, but you have excessive energy consumption, which leads to agro-industrial overproduction, overshooting the limits of growth, uneven wealth distribution, and a political economy. Inside the capitalism, you have pollution, industrial accidents, depletion of natural resources, dwindling ecosystems, overconsumption, the throwaway culture, and consumerism. For profit and the overshoots of limiting growth, you have poverty, poor health, illiteracy, inadequate or no shelter, little food, insufficient fresh water, no family planning. For uneven wealth distribution, waste of natural resources, overconsumption, greed, multiple possessions, delusion of abundance, economic euphoria, money fetishism. And in the political economy, you have war proliferation, military spending, the war racket, the police state, political tyranny ruled by corporations, corrupt governments, and globalization. This could lead to the collapse of the water purifying mechanisms, collapse of air regulating systems, collapse of natural pest control systems, global collapse of fisheries. This is basically saying the world's going to die, which I don't believe in. Loss of food production, malnourishment, land use, deforestation, soil degradation. Industrialism, you have this unsustainable lifestyle, unethical behavior, moral decline, abounding waste, agricultural and municipal, industrial, dysfunctional societies, inordinate prevalence to psychopathy. For the political economy, you have economic exploitation and national debt. For industrialism, you have civil conflict, pandemic diseases and famine, poverty, land degradation, and illiteracy. You could have ecosystems collapse, economic systems collapse, societal collapse, running out of resources, which will inevitably lead to war, ecocide, and omnicide. I don't agree with all these, this thing, because I believe if the ecosystem collapses, I believe that we cannot influence the world enough to cause that. We may die, but I don't think the Earth is going to die, and certainly not everything on the world, unless, even if we did a complete, total nuclear annihilation, the world would go on. We may not. But there is a definite belief that the economic system collapses, society can collapse, a government can collapse, which would lead to the beginning again. There are two dominant views that guide most societies. One is religious, the other is secular. Religions more or less have the same central core of nature's balance, and there's a greater power and control. Secular humanism rejects that and believes that man is in control, and with enough sacrifice, will, and power, all problems can be solved by tinkering. Religious people believe that the individual is special. Secular people look at people as a means to the end and therefore expendable. Religious people believe the group should sacrifice for the individual, much like a family would for their children. Secular people believe that the individual should be sacrificed for the greater good, much like how the citizens are sacrificed for the state. Both views are really a formalized worldview that express their inner psychological desires. Empathetic people tend to be religious and seek harmony, and psychopathic people seek for control and domination over others. Secular people strive for materialistic, man-made things to satisfy their inner emptiness. They desire what others have. They plot to control their destiny. They seek to control nature and others. Whereas religious people strive for sacrifice and giving, appreciating what you have. Everything happens for a reason. Spending time with people. A harmonious life with nature, God, and others. We now focus on individual entitlements, where we once focused on strengthening the family. We could be at the peak of everything. Peak gold is a new theory that's coming up, that the easiest stuff has been found and that there's the rest is a declining return on energy investment. Same goes with peak oil. The easy stuff has been found and the rest is just going to be a harder investment for less amount of return on investment. Peak debt. Since oil is the fuel for the world economy, if that is declining, the ability to finance debt will collapse, which will lead to peak food. Peak oil and peak debt are the means to which food becomes more expensive. Peak consumer. As oil, credit, and food become more expensive, people have less to shop on more frivolous purchases. People will no longer be able to live beyond their means. Peak government. If debt is no longer going to be able to be financed and the consumer economy collapses, government will be forced to contract in size and scope, which could lead to peak America. If government is uncontrollably downsized, the United States will no longer have the ability to project military power. Peak people. The ensuing collapse in the current world will result in massive loss of life, famine, war, and disease, until a new sustainable equilibrium can be found. This is a chart of population growth throughout history, and you can see, there was a pretty normal balance of humans throughout this time period, with the one exception, the Black Death, the plague that we covered earlier in Module 6. But then there's a parabolic rise in people, and that is a direct result of the amount of oil that was discovered. More oil produced more leisure time, more food, more energy, more resources were brought in to harvest because of this energy, and because of that there was more people that were brought in. So we can see this temporary victory over nature just by our growth. We overcame the disease and elements to create a thriving environment for us. Yet this exponential growth will inevitably lead to a very real and powerful reality of the limits on our world. While I don't believe that the world cannot support 8 billion or even 10 or 12 billion people, we certainly cannot support the society the way it is structured now, with the untold amount of resources used for war, corporate uses of energy and power, the centralization of our food and resources. We could support all this if we rebalanced our economy, our society, and had a more harmonious living.